Welcome to This Humean Life. I am your host, Sam Kukathis. This Humean Life explores what it is to be human, identity, language, and the plasticity of ideas. It embraces making the unfamiliar familiar. The episodes move between the somber and the playful because life is filled with moments of both. It embraces uncertainty because the ideas are inspired by 10 years researching and living in the head of the Scottish philosopher David Hume. In the 18th century, Hume did something more successful in Western philosophy than even the Cartesian, who doubted everything but the I. Hume questioned the certainty of the I. In this podcast, the I is always in question, always in a state of flux, because it gives up the presumption of knowing with certainty who we truly are. At its core, embracing the uncertainty of knowing even the I, or the you, is what creates the opportunity to bring discovery and wonder, not just to an uncertain world, but to what we most take for granted. Welcome to This Humean Life. In today's first episode, we're really going to set the tone for what this podcast is really going to focus on. And that's language. Now you might be thinking, why are you focusing on language? Well, here's what I have to say. Language shapes your reality. Language shapes the quality of your life. And if you don't understand properly the way in which language shapes your reality, it will impact the quality of your life. Now, for some of you, you may be listening to this and think you've never heard anything like this before in your life. For others, you'll have heard this for years and years. And for those who haven't heard it, this could be potentially life-changing. And for those who have heard it, I want you to listen with a beginner's mindset. Listen afresh and see how you've stopped practicing what you know to be common sense. What you will learn as this podcast develops is that I'm someone who's incredibly curious about the human experience. And for those of you who are listening, I want to ask you this. How many of you ever felt guilty, felt fearful, or anxious? You felt there was something you should do. Or perhaps you felt you weren't enough, or you berated yourself for the lack of motivation or procrastination. Now, I know that all may sound quite nebulous right now, but bear with me. So why are all these feelings important? Well, they are all rooted in language. If we didn't have the word fearful, we wouldn't have a feeling of fear. The word creates our understanding of our reality. We experience something as fearful because we have language to attach to that experience. So let me go deeper. When I'm working with a client, what I am looking for is the language that they use. Because the language that they use gives me so much information about the way they see themselves and the way they see their circumstances. I commonly hear words like, I don't trust anyone, or I feel ashamed, or I feel like a failure, or what did I do wrong? These words are laden with emotion, heaviness, and significance. They constrain what is possible for people. They do not see, when they come in to a session, the way in which language has a beautiful plasticity to it. Rather, the language looks rigid. It almost looks like there is a reality to the language. It doesn't look like Playdough. It looks solid and fixed. But here's the thing. We only need to think for a moment to realize that can't be true. Because words which took on a certain meaning in the 10th century may have then come by the 18th century to mean something entirely different, or by the 21st century to mean something entirely different still. That's the beauty of it. Language is constantly adapting to the changing needs, the changing demands, and the changing ideas within society. But yet there is still this time where we get stuck in this idea that there isn't a plasticity to language, that it's fixed, that there's a truth out there. It's like this tangible thing. We get the idea that every question has an answer, but why? Because it's knowable. And if it's knowable, then there must be an answer to be discovered, right? There must be something that they can tell us about what's really going on or what's wrong with us. Why aren't I good enough? Why aren't I motivated? Why am I failing this? All these why questions come from a place as if there's something wrong, as if something is wrong with us. And yet there's not. That's the hilarity. The language has constrained us and made us believe there's actually something wrong with us so much of the time. And I don't mean all the time because, geez, that would be painful. If we walked around life constantly thinking there was something wrong with us, my God, there wouldn't be moments of joy. There wouldn't be moments of excitement. There wouldn't be moments of love and freedom and beauty and creativity. And there is. But there are times where we as human beings feel love. We feel like things are fixed. There's a rigidity to the human experience. And what we have right now is such an opportunity to recalibrate what really matters to us, to distinguish what wasn't working in our lives in the way that we were living with them before, which we want to throw away. Like seriously, we want to throw them away. That's not working for me. Someone else can have that if they really want it, but I'm done. I am done with that. You know, I'll give you one. For me, it was fear. It was fear. If I say that, what will people think? Will they judge me? Will it be okay? And eventually I just thought, fuck it. I have to throw myself into the flames and see whether I come back scolded or unscolded. But here's what I know. Every time I have been scolded, I have come back stronger. I have built my level of resilience. It has created an extra layer of what Vishen Lakhiani calls unfuckwithability. And that's a magic word, which we can look to reclaim because of the plasticity of language. The more we stand in the idea of the plasticity of language, the more we stand in the idea of the plasticity of who we are as human beings. We get to create who we are. We get to create who we are for other people. We get to create who we are for ourselves. And we get to give up whatever isn't serving us. If we felt disconnected and isolated before, then let's throw away that old self which makes us feel disconnected and isolated. And stand in. If you knew that people loved you unconditionally, if you knew that people would be there, what would you do differently? What would you bring to the table so that you never felt disconnected and isolated again? And if you're the kind of person like me, who has at times struggled to reach out for help because you think, I've done all this work, I should have figured out for myself. Hey, I got you. I understand you. I was you. But we know deep down that asking for help is the greatest sign of strength, because it takes courage to ask for help. So many of us are afraid of how we look and how it looks to ask. Will they judge me? Will they really? But who cares? Seriously, who cares? And look, I really get the way in which we can be afraid of others' judgment. But here too is an example where language is constraining our reality. Why do I say that? Well, the word judgment has come to mean there's something wrong. When you make a judgment about someone, we attach morality, we attach good or bad, and then we attach the feelings which are associated with it. We attach the shame when you make a judgment, or we attach the pride when someone makes a judgment. But what we don't see is the way in which everything could be understood as a matter of judgment. So why do I say that? I say that because I'm thinking of judgment from a different place. I'm thinking of judgment from a point of view of plasticity, from the point of view of language being like Playdough and mouldable. Here, judgment is a causal judgment. It's about the idea that as human beings, we are constantly connecting thoughts to other thoughts. And when we connect those thoughts, we create our reality. Or we're connecting the thought with the language that we use, and we do that and we create our reality. It's why when we utter the statement, I feel guilty, we are not just stating, I feel guilty. We are creating something about us which is true. It becomes inherent about us that we are guilty. We don't even question the fact, because the feeling is so visceral, that somewhere there must be a truth out there which is called guilt. But here's the thing. If you cut us open, what would you actually find? Would you find deep down this thing you call guilt? Or would you find just the tissue, the blood, the guts, and everything external which makes up our physical body? Just think about that for a moment. We create ourselves as if who we are is the feeling of guilt, the feeling of shame, and then we attach that to us as if it is part of who we are. It becomes part of our identity. But it's not. It's just something we've taken on. And it's something we've taken on because we've attached that language to who we are now. And once we see that we can detach that language just as quickly, we can create a whole new realm of freedom about who we are and who we can be as human beings. Now, the point of this episode has to give you a taste for the way in which language is shaping our reality and how it can impact the quality of our lives. But as we go further into this podcast, what I will be doing is really looking at how we can go beyond the script that we have created around who we are, how we can go beyond the way in which language can constrain us and actually bring the kind of plasticity that I have been talking about and gesturing at into our lives, so that we get to have the level of freedom which moves us from a place of survival, which is an evolutionary instinct, which is just how we are built, to a place where we get to thrive when we bring that plasticity and the moldability of who we are and the language that we use to describe ourselves. So if you've enjoyed this first episode, please subscribe and please share this with your friends and your community. Now, when I started this episode, I told you that this has the potential to be life-changing. And I meant it. But here's how we can take what I talk about in this podcast from a place of information to a place of transformation. I'm creating a community of people who either already see the world this way or who want to see this way. And I'm doing this by creating a Facebook group for This Humean Life. So if this is something which excites you, then reach out to me at The Philosophical Coach. And together, we will support one another in creating a life that we truly love, and one where we all get to thrive.